Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Critical Podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Good, and joining me, as always, is my go-to podcast compadre, Mr. Joe Lever. Joe, how you doing, buddy?
Welcome to the jungle, Jimmy.
We got fun and games.
We got everything you want.
We know the names. Dang, like that. We didn't even practice that.
And it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, dude, that's a good song.
Thank you for having me, Jimmy. Excited as always.
Thank you. I'm excited that you're here, too. You know, I really like that song, but the more you listen to it, like, the more... So there's kind of some sad messages in that. But I
maybe hair. I just love the guitar, the instrumentals. I love the interludes where it's like that. You know that like that. Oh yeah,
dude. That must be Slash, right? It's Guns N' Roses.
Yes.
Yeah, Slash man.
Yes.
Slash.
Yes.
Back in the day when they used to.
Still a guitar god.
Still. He's so good. Anyway, yeah. This is the Critical Podcast, where we don't talk about classical rock and roll all the time, but sometimes we do, because Welcome to the Jungle is it's a great song. Go listen to it sometime. Anyway, thanks to everybody who was joining us, coming back from last week's episode where we had Christine, aka Ivy Winter, on to talk about Popstar Never Stop, Never Stopping, which is a film which some segments will never leave my brain. But I will say this, I went back to listen to, because it's Lonely Islanders, I did listen to I'm on a Boat. It's still a good song. Like, that's a funny song. So, kudos.
And my flippy floppies.
Yeah. And you're at, I'm flipping burgos. You're at Kinko straight flipping copies. Yeah, I still got it. Yeah, Andy, call me up. Let's do it. I'm working on a Disney rap, Joe. I'll lay down some lines for you after the show, if I remember. Anyway, this
thing is, that's just clever stuff. That's clever writing, man. It's good stuff.
It's clever writing. Yeah, I agree. Anyway, this week we are actually returning to our Star Wars. You see, look, there's the poster that's always there, but we're talking Star Wars. This is Mandalorian. This is a gift from Joe and Haley, by the way. Thank you, Joe and Haley. But
Absolutely.
We're going back to Star Wars. We're talking about each movie kind of by themselves. So if you guys haven't seen and you want to go back after this, we talked through the original trilogy. We talked through the prequel trilogy, everybody's favorite. They love Phantom Menace. So many people love Phantom Menace. They're all just naming their kids Palpatine, Jar Jar, Qui-Gon. I bet there's somebody out there named Qui-Gon. I'll put money on that.
If there's somebody out there named Jar Jar, they need to. I'll refrain from any further comments.
Fair enough. At best, he did his best. That's all I'm trying to say. And I will say this, watching some Lord of the Rings behind-the-scenes stuff, they talked about Gollum, and they were like, we got to do better CG at the time than Gollum. Than Jar Jar, because that came out in like 99, and then Gollum was 2001, 2002 more so, and 2003.
And they did a better job. Thank God.
Man, that stuff holds up. Anyway, sorry, we're not talking about Lord of the Rings. We've already done that. It's so good. Anyway, but now we're talking about the sequel trilogy or the more modern trilogy, and then eventually maybe we'll circle back around to Rogue One and Solo and all that other stuff. I'm pretty sure those are the only two spin-offs right now, unless I'm forgetting one, and I'm so sorry if that's the case.
The only ones that count that I know of.
Only ones that count. Solo, not that bad. Anyway,
not bad.
But we're going to talk about The Force Awakens today. Like, you see Kylo Ren back over there. But this is full spoilers. This movie came out years ago. You probably, if you're listening to this, have already watched it. And for those who've watched and listened to, like, all the shows, this was, like, the preemptive very first episode we ever did of this show. I did it with my friend Leo. You can listen to him kind of playing a game in the background, kind of like saying yeah a lot as I talk through my feelings. But we're going to talk about Force Awakens, like I said. We're just going to get fully into it. But Joe, he's got the synopsis for us. Joe, he's got the beat for just in case you forgot what happened in The Force Awakens, because it's been a couple of years. Joe?
Yeah, so sorry if this gets a little long-winded, but I think we're going to get a little into some of the weeds on this discussion, so I want to kind of cover it thoroughly and set it up well. So, first of all, timeline. Where does it fall? So, approximately 30 years after the Galactic Civil War, First Order rises from the remnants of the Galactic Empire. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have the Resistance on the other side, which is backed by the Republic and led by Leia. And obviously they are the confrontation to the First Order. Luke Skywalker, somehow present but lost at the moment. They're in search of him because he's a big deal. You can't see, but I'm doing like he's a big deal.
The air quotes. Air quotes.
I mean, he is. Anywho, so okay, so then you're introduced to some new characters. We'll get into characters and why this movie is kind of nice and kind of impactful due to the diverse cast and everything. So on the planet Jakku, you're introduced to Poe Dameron, who's a Resistance pilot. I almost said pirate. Pilot.
Kind of. He used to be.
Technically, yeah. But anyway, so you're introduced to him, and he has a stolen piece of a map in order to find Luke Skywalker. Now, here you're introduced to the First Order leader and the new version of the stormtroopers and everything when they raid the village and capture Poe, trying to get the map so that they can find Luke Skywalker, because obviously there's a vengeance there and they want to snuff out the Jedi once and for all, kind of a thing, right? Same kind of song and dance. BB-8, the new droid you're introduced to, escapes with the map. And then you're introduced to Rey, because BB-8 runs into Rey on the planet. And that's kind of how she's brought into the fold through the droid encounter. You're also introduced to FN2187, also known as Finn, further down the line. He's turmoil-ish feelings, doesn't like what he's being forced to do, that sort of thing. And he, what's the word? Defects, yeah. I was going to say commits treason.
That works too. I mean, yeah, both.
I mean, kind of technically, but anywho. He defects the First Order and, meets Rey and everything, and they escape the clutches of the First Order and that whole song and dance, and we can get into it more. The Falcon, meanwhile, is assumed, broken down, sitting on the desert scape there in Jakku, where Rey and Finn and BB-8 are trying to run from the stormtroopers and everything, and they get in there, get a run in, and escape. And this is how you're introduced to Han Solo and Chewbacca from the original trilogy, New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, and the last Return of the Jedi.
Very good.
So Harrison Ford reprising the role, and then you have Chewbacca, new actor in this one. But anywho, they capture the ship on a cargo vessel that they're piloting across space, carrying some cargo, whatever. And they capture the ship, and Chewie, we're home. They walk in, and Rey and Finn and BB are hiding in the hallway, the ducts under the floor, and all that. But anywho, so you're introduced to them. Things develop and everything, and they escape on the Falcon because a couple rival gangs show up on the cargo ship to confront Han for some debts they owe him and this and that. Confrontation ensues, and they all escape on the Millennium Falcon. And that's how the Millennium Falcon and Han Solo and Chewbacca are reprised in this trilogy, which is, very well written out. And anyway, all right, I'm getting off the synopsis and into the details. I warned you. So anywho, a nice way of re-entering those characters and that ship back into this new trilogy, and pulling on a little bit of the I'm doing it again. Okay, so they realize that BB-8's carrying a piece of that map that gets divulged. And let's see, Han knows a little bit about Luke Skywalker and whatever, and the Jedi Order trying to be reprised, but eventually things went south when an apprentice went rogue or something of that nature. Obviously, you can connect the dots, especially if you've seen the movie, which we assume you have by now. So then, they start connecting dots, yada, yada, and then Starkiller Base destroys the New Republic and its fleet. I forget what planet that was. I don't know if you recall, Jimmy, but the capital.
Yeah, it's not
so they
Coruscant,
destroy the
though.
New Republic.
It's like a different planet or something.
Yeah. So basically, the resistance being reinforced by the New Republic, the resistance no longer has that reinforcement, and the resistance is a little bit more of a scrappy, lonesome survivor faction. So obviously playing to the hand of the First Order. Okay. BB-8 encounters R2-D2, and who's been inactive since Luke's disappearance, so for a long time. Starkiller Base prepares to fire again. The Resistance, they want to destroy... Okay, so they want to destroy the Starkiller Base, obviously, and they find some intricate details through knowledge from Finn and I think some other means, and they plan out an attack on Starkiller Base to take it down in similar fashion to A New Hope, but better, a little more intricate, I would say. And we'll get into that. So anywho, they devise a team, mainly Han, Chewbacca, Finn, and Rey, to lead this attack on Starkiller Base. Obviously, Poe and the X-Wings play a part too down the road, but most of this has to be done from the ground in a kind of covert infiltration. So within this whole infiltration and the setup to taking down Starkiller Base, Kylo confronts Han, who, spoiler alert, Han is his father. Everybody pretty much knows by now. I don't think we need to warn people about spoilers here. And Kylo kills Han after a small conversation and whatnot. And Kylo does get wounded and shot by Chewbacca, who is overlooking. And Kylo pursues Finn and Rey as they're trying to escape into the woods to get off the planet, yada, yada. And they get into a confrontation. And Finn, who had a lightsaber given to him by... Do you know the character name? Maz?
Maz Kanata, very good, Joe.
Yeah, Maz Kanata, back at the cantina. Here we go. Here's a note. Takodana.
Oh, Takodana, that's the name of the planet, right?
Yeah, that just sounded weird. Anywho, so Finn's been holding on to this lightsaber for safekeeping because Maz obviously, saw something in Rey, that sort of thing, hold on to it for kind of a deal. Finn tries to, take on Kylo on his own and ends up getting pretty severely wounded, etc. And then Rey kind of takes up the mantle and uses the saber and the Force against Kylo and kind of defeats him, but not really. Obviously, the planet's falling apart around him. They're separated by a fissure, and things kind of disperse from there, and they escape on the Millennium Falcon. So that's kind of how things end, essentially. Starkiller Base in ruins, done. The planet basically implodes, and you're left on a cliffhanger. And I shouldn't close it out there. They do BB-8 and R2-D2. R2-D2 had the rest of the Luke's map, and they put in BB-8's piece, and it completes the map so they know where Luke is. Rey goes to confront Luke on Ahch-To.
Oh, Ahch-To.
Ahch-To.
Ahch-To. I think that's what it is.
Should have been a double O or something there. Anywho, I am kind of reading this offline because it is a lot to remember, and I wanted to give the audience a full synopsis with kind of a step-by-step, the happenings throughout the movie or the major plot or action points of it, so you know how it develops kind of step-by-step. So that's kind of what you end with. You end with Luke seeing Rey. She's holding his lightsaber out to him, and it's kind of a wide-eyed moment, and it pans out, and it's like, holy crap, what happens next? And you want episode 8 to start immediately.
Yeah.
Left wanting more.
Yeah, and that was from Wikipedia, right?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. Cool. Wikipedia and some of my own research and memory.
Well, and that's okay, Joe. You did a great job. good synopsis there, because that basically
we
covers...
cited our sources.
We cited
Professor.
Wikipedia did it. Yeah, so that way Wikipedia can't come after us. No, I think we should go through, though. And I want to go through kind of character by character, maybe some action set pieces as well. And then at the end, kind of talk about the things we liked, didn't like. I'd like to start at the very beginning, Joe. It's a very good place to start. I'm going to start with the pivotal character here. I want to talk about Rey, whose last name, I don't know if I should spoil for people, because it could be one thing, but it could be another. It's really whatever you want it to be. Kind of is the thing. But Rey, obviously, are more or less the new kind of like entry point for people who might not know Star Wars. Some similarities to Luke in the past, being this orphan on Jakku, kind of waiting for her parents to return. But she's more scrappy. She's trying to kind of just squeak by every day, just because she doesn't want to leave that place. She wants to stay right there, so when her parents do come back for her, because they left her there, that she'll be right there. And I think her introduction is really interesting, and it frustrates me a little, because they show like the battle for Jakku that happened a long time ago. You see like a Star Destroyer that's like in the sand, and you see like some X-Wings that are destroyed too. And I get that like this new age of Star Wars, there's a lot, it's even more so about like, hinting at things and then showing it in other things. Like we get that battle for Jakku in Star Wars Battlefront 2. I just really wish a little bit that we could have seen in like subsequent films like that, because that it makes you want to know more about that place, because you're like, whoa, like she is living here, there was a giant battle here, like what the heck, like I want to know about this, right? Like I want to see this happen. And so it's very, very tease. This movie feels like such a good setup and such a good tease at like what could happen. And I think it's cool to put Rey kind of like right in the middle of all that, because right at the beginning you're like, wow, okay, who's this person? Why is she important? Where is she? Like she's in this coolest place. How do you feel about Rey, Joe? Do you like Rey?
Yeah, it's kind of an innocent and seemingly semi-meaningless introduction. So it's kind of it's more of a, how do you want to say it? The tone of her introduction, it's kind of chipper in a way. Yep. Right, scavenging and all, sledding down the sand. She's got the mask on, type of a thing, and all that. I think very appropriate for. My main thing was it was very appropriate, an appropriate introduction for her because of the way her character is. The good side of things and everything. It had that very light on its feet introduction, good music.
John Williams, man, so good.
Yeah, which we can talk about the music all day long. Let's just get right to the point on the music. The music throughout the film and this entire trilogy, excellent. Can you complain about one thing? No. So we'll shut up about it.
It's perfect. Yeah,
great. But I mean, her introduction. I don't know how far you were taking it there in your statement, but prior to her running into Finn and then they're running from the First Order and all that. Her introduction, simple, kind of outlining how she's grown up over the past, probably 10 or 12 years since her parents left her or something like that. You assume she's probably like maybe 20 or maybe even a hair younger, around that age. I don't know if they ever divulge that, but so it was interesting, and just seeing the hardship she has to go through on that planet and things she has to do to survive. It's nice. It's good.
Yeah. I know one thing that a lot of people kind of fall back on is that she doesn't, I think until later on, they kind of establish more depth to her, or more kind of like character flaws, because in this first movie she almost seems like a one-woman wrecking crew, which is totally fine, but it's like it almost seems like she doesn't really need anybody else to kind of work with, because she kind of knows how to do all of it. And I wonder if originally, if the thought was to like say that all the Jedi or her heritage or whatever it was going to be, that was kind of like the reason she was, really good with a lightsaber, or she could fly the Millennium Falcon basically without even thinking about it. Like she just could do kind of anything and everything, which is kind of, I think it's cool, because first off, we haven't really had a female lead in any of these Star Wars films before. But I just want to know, like, did that, like, when you watched it the first time, does that matter to you? Or now knowing how that kind of her character, we know now more about her, does that help you be like, oh yeah, I guess that makes more sense in a weird way.
I didn't really look too deep between the cracks on that one when like she's able to intuitively kind of take care of the Millennium Falcon. She knows a bit about fixing this and working on that. I found it believable knowing that she was a scavenger, or what did they call her? Yeah, so she's been around, those types of tech pieces before. She's been in ships. I almost feel like in the Star Wars realm, most people have been exposed to a ship at some point or another in some way or another. And, similar to like, I've never flown a jet before. Oh, okay, this is a bad example because we all know there are a lot of switches and primers, and you got to make sure everything's toggled on and in the right position before you take off in a jet. But so it's maybe a little more complicated than that. But Millennium Falcon, through the movies you see it has its complexities, but for the most part, I mean, throttle the thing up, grab the steering wheel, and if you know how to get it to go up and down and side to side, I think you can figure it out there. Obviously, they're in the heat of the moment; they're taking big risks. They might have crashed for all we know, but it's a movie, it goes on. So I found it somewhat believable that she had been exposed to that in some way, somehow before. She knows a little bit about tech this, tech that. She can repair certain things. She's encountered a lot of parts and pieces of ships over the years. So I found that somewhat believable and that she's capable, right? She's dealt with a lot of things on her own for however long her parents dropped her off for. Which was quite a while. She was making the etch marks on the wall and all that. Mm-hmm. I found it appropriate. I think they set it up well there. That's the one thing about these movies and The Force Awakens in particular. They don't take a lot of time for conversation.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of people just walk around, meet with each other, have a conversation to tell you what happened, how it happened, and when. They show you. A lot of this is all done through the actual movie making and the scenes. They show her scavenging and dealing with tech and bartering with the trade-in guy and whatnot. So you can tell she's been around the block. She's experienced. She's dealt with these types of things before and is capable of handling her own. Mm-hmm. Maybe not so in depth to where you're like, oh yeah, she's got it. I mean, she's going to be very capable to handle her own, but that she has some experience and is well adapted to living life and rough and tumble and handle her own in tough situations. Right. So I kind of felt like it all kind of melded well. I didn't find anything too unbelievable that, like she could start that ship and fly it. I mean, I was okay with it.
Yeah. I think the one thing for me, and I get this a little bit because they show her early on kind of fighting with her bow staff. I know some people have the problem with her fighting Kylo Ren later on, kind of one-on-one with a lightsaber. Now, there's a few things to keep in mind, too. Kylo got shot with a Wookiee bowcaster, which was sending stormtroopers flipping flying. And he also got in a fight with Finn, who also kind of knows how to use lightsaber a little bit. I mean, he worked, we'll get to Finn, but he started in sanitation, and then he worked his way up to stormtrooper, and then somehow he learned how to use those electrical staff. I wish we could have seen more of that. I want to see Finn's backstory, man. Well, that's the stuff,
The thing is that they don't show you enough, and sorry to interject, but with Finn, they don't show you enough of his background. You have to kind of connect the dots on that. Okay, if he made it from sanitation to stormtrooper, in order to be a stormtrooper, granted, we always joke about stormtroopers, like their aim is like the worst in all the world, or all the universe, whatever, but couldn't hit the broadside of a barn door. But there had to be been training there of some sort, so he has to be able to handle his own. He is a military man, if you will, so he's got to have some sort of capabilities of his own to hold his own in a fight. So obviously he doesn't win the fight. He gets pretty severely injured and all that, but does his best. And like you said, Kylo had been wounded pretty bad. strong as he is and all, I mean, that's going to hinder anyone. So I think they knew where they were going with that anyway, but I feel like it's all very accurate in how it probably would have happened, right?
Sure. It's weird though. I wish there would have been more ramification for that in the next movie, like because he does get kind of like sliced up the back and stuff. Like he's just kind of like,
Right.
fine. Again, we're talking about this film, but the other thing too to consider is a lot of people compare this one to A New Hope. I know I totally do, and I think like seeing Luke use the lightsaber with the helmet and the blast shield down or whatever, and kind of like training that way. I think, and he doesn't really get to use the lightsaber too much in that first movie. I think a lot of people were kind of like, who were, old fans of the franchise, kind of go into this one and they're like, oh no, we need to have like a 3-minute scene where she takes a lightsaber and she kind of swings it around a little bit. And they do a lot more of that in this, like the subsequent films, I think, to kind of placate that, to be like, all right, she's using it now. Like, it's fine. But again, within the third movie, you can kind of, in a sense, say that there's a reason why she's okay. Like, she's pretty good with one. Also, we don't know. Palpatine is still pretty good. Anyway, like with Snoke in the training and like Luke in the training for Kylo, like, his lightsaber skills. It's also a very different fighting style. We'll talk about that later too. But I know people will be frustrated out there because if I don't mention the whole lightsaber thing, I think it's fine. All right, everybody. You just point the scary end of the lightsaber away from yourself, and you just try to whack them. You just try to whack. Like,
put yourself in that position. First of all, she wields a staff all the time, and I'm sure she's gotten in a tussle or two with like a gang or a rival scavenger for some crap or whatever. If you're in that situation, you're given a lightsaber, you got a wounded guy over there that you got to fight. I mean, I'm pretty sure I know how to swing a damn sword.
Yeah.
Granted, I'm not going to be the best at it, but yeah, like you said, point the damn scary end at them and swing as hard as you freaking can, and hopefully they give and you break them down. I mean, there's not much to it than that. It's not like her fighting in this scene at the end. We're kind of jumping way ahead, but that fight between those two, I think totally plausible. I mean, it's not like her fighting style was all that eloquent or anything. It was kind of straightforward and swing.
So was
That's
his.
about all there was to it.
Yeah.
And so was his, and he's got a freaking major bleeding wound in his freaking kidney area. I mean, I think it's all in the up and up, and if you're really delving that far into the weeds, get over yourself.
Yeah. I think it would have been cool if, like, instead of the bow staff, early on, if they were never going to do the double lightsaber thing, if they would have given her a vibro blade, which is, we've seen that in The Mandalorian, like a vibro blade, like a little knife. It would have been so cool if she would have pulled one of those out to somebody. But the thing about a vibro blade is, like, it can, like, so people who don't know what that is, it's basically like a tangible version, in a sense, kind of like a lightsaber. So it's a blade that vibrates so fast it can, like, block a lightsaber and stuff. I don't know, sometimes maybe cut through them. But it would be kind of, I guess, mean if she had a weapon like that. Because first off, that'd be super rare. It'd also be really expensive. But if she had that and she was using it on people, she'd be messing people up. She wouldn't be, like, knocking people out. Like, she would have fought those guys off early at that, like, in Jakku. And they were, like, ripped them apart. They would have been, like, bloody messes. They were, like, like that. And that's not a really great way to introduce a heroine, I understand, or any hero of any make. But, yeah, also, with a question for you, Joe. When Kylo, it's very specific, we're in the weeds. Kylo's hitting himself with that Wookiee bowcaster wound. Do you think he's stopping it? Or do you think he's, like, hitting it to make himself angrier? And he's like, all right, this is more... Okay.
He's trying to inflict pain on himself and make him angrier and all that to try and tap into more power, kind of a thing.
More dark side. I love it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I will say this, though, talking about Rey, and I do want to kind of segue into the other kind of main characters. I really do enjoy her relationship, as fleeting as it may be, with Han Solo. Because there's this... I kind of like this whole, like, it almost seems like she's kind of the daughter Han always wanted. She's, like, an incredibly capable young woman who's nice, doesn't seem to have, like, a lot of inner demons, and I think there's something that is really attractive to him as far as, like, another crewmate, like, he's kind of like, oh man, like, I could kind of take you under my wing. My son is kind of going off and doing his own thing, but, like, you seem like a cool, nice person, and, I'd never ask you to, join, but if you wanted to, and the pay's not going to be good, and you'll probably hate it, and, I love the kind of curmudgeony, like, kind of standoffish Han Solo. Like, I think it's a fun new layer to him that we haven't really gotten before. I don't know how you felt about that.
No, I agree, and they, I can't remember exactly, but I feel like they developed their relationship somewhat well. It's kind of quick and quibby,
Yeah.
but she develops a. I'm trying to. What's the right term there? But an affinity for him.
Yeah, an attachment.
Yeah, exactly. Because sees good qualities in him, that sort of thing. Although if you met Han Solo off the cuff and you never knew him before, little shady, a
Yeah.
little
Oh,
bit.
dude, he's super shady. Are you kidding? He's a super shady boy. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But through their dealings and their little travels and whatnot, and he does their solid here and there. I think they start to develop that relationship quite well, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, now let's move on to another one of the main characters. We're talking about him before, but let's get into FN2187, or as we all know him as Finn. Pretty much one of the first characters or people we ever saw for this new Star Wars as they kind of panned over the desert and he kind of stood up in stormtrooper armor. And I think we talked about kind of like, I wish we could see more of his background. I think his background is so interesting because like on paper, I think that is one of the more complex and fascinating characters. You're like, what if a stormtrooper like one day was like, I'm done. Like they're like, I don't want to be a stormtrooper anymore. Like this is really bad. Like I think that's so cool. And I really kind of wanted to see that, go throughout this film. And they kind of, get into it. But I wanted, again, to kind of see that in 2 and 3. But I still think he's a decent character. Another kind of like a fresh face to the world as being like, what if you didn't work for the First Order anymore and you have to kind of make it on your own? And he's not really the most cunning guy. Like he's got all these ideas and kind of schemes, but they don't always go super well. And he kind of gets caught up in this whole thing. And I think in this first movie, I don't think he's that bad. I don't know how you feel about him.
Yeah, well, kind of naive to the world because when they're plucked young to become First Order servants or troopers. So naive to the world around him beyond what he's been exposed to within the First Order. So the background is interesting. I don't carry him with too much weight, I guess, because he's very. I don't know what the right word is for him, but very. He's not very confident in any capacity.
Sure. Yeah. That's kind of his whole character, right?
Exactly. Obviously he develops through the remaining films, which is appropriate. But for this one, he's there as kind of he's informational for one. He was a means to destroy Starkiller Base. He had knowledge of this, that, and the other thing due to being at these locations and knowing the layouts and things of that nature. So, a character as a means to the end kind of a thing.
Yeah.
A way to get that knowledge and everything. So it worked for the storyline and the plot. And I think his character may have just grown from there into something bigger, even though I'm sure they had thought that through ahead of time. But for starters, I think the initial introduction and for the first bit of the movie, I don't carry him with an immense ton of weight, or I'm not that interested in him. But then later in the movie, as he's developing the relationship, becoming more honest with his past and this and that, and moving on and doing the right things, and he starts to become more of that main character and pull his own weight, so to speak, and you start to respect him a bit more and that sort of thing. So, not that you didn't already, because he knew between right and wrong and defected and all, but you know what I mean. He becomes more impactful as it goes.
He only defected because some stormtrooper who got shot was bleeding, and he put his bloody hand all over his face, which I don't understand how that works, because I thought the laser blast didn't make you bleed. It's very confusing. No, I'm just kidding. I think
when was that?
It's at the very beginning. Like he gets one of the stormtroopers.
I know he gets a blood mark, but was it the stormtrooper?
It's another stormtrooper, yeah, and he puts his kind of like that, and it kind of marks him. I think the thing about him that's interesting, his whole arc is like kind of leaving one cause and then he's about to leave another, because later on when they get to Maz's, he's like, yeah, we gotta get out of here. He's like, Rey, let's just go. He's like, this is our fight. And he's about to leave, but then he kind of stands and fights and basically almost dies for his new friend. He kind of finds something to care about, which I enjoy. I do think it's kind of funny, though, that, and I get that Rey needs to go find Luke, but I love how, I don't want to say he gets friend-zoned. I just think it's so funny that she's just like, my friend, thank you. And like in the beginning, he's all just like, hey, you got like a boyfriend? You got like a boyfriend or whatever. Like he's kind of like he's acquiring.
Looking back on that, do you think that was even?
I think it was a thought. I think they thought, okay, we'll plant this, kind of here, and then we get that a little bit in Rise of Skywalker with like Poe though, which is kind of weird. I don't know. I don't know if they ever knew what to do with her, if they wanted to do a full-on romance or not. Because I thought at first it was going to be Finn, because I thought it was going to be kind of like their whole, their dynamic. But I don't know. Yeah. It's like I like it when they're together. Like I like when those two are together and when Poe's with them too, and that's what you get more of in Rise of Skywalker. Not really at all, pretty much in Last Jedi. But I think Finn's fine. Again, I just think I feel like there's so much to be mined from that character, and it's just like, I really wish they would have. I still had that theory, Joe, the one I will always bring up. I'll bring it when we talk about Last Jedi. What if Finn were a sleeper agent? That's all I'm trying to say. It would be so cool. Okay, anyway, let's move on. We're talking about the kind of the main three here. Let's move over to Poe Dameron. And you know what, Joe? I'll be honest with you. I really like Poe. I guess like I like it because he's got like shades of Han Solo from the original trilogy. Little kind of Luke-ish, maybe tiny bit, but he's like overly confident, and that comes to bite him later on, especially more so in like Last Jedi. So there's some flaws there, but like when you see this guy, not only is he like an interesting guy, he's kind of quick-witted and all that, but he's like, and as Finn says, he's one hell of a pilot, because you see him later on in that kind of tracking shot, or whatever you want to call it, and they kind of Finn's perspective, and you see this X-Wing come and he, like, over Maz's cantina, and it takes out, like, 4 or 5 or 6 or, like, whatever TIE fighters, and you're like, whoa, like, that guy knows what he's doing, and I love that he's, like, bold enough in the beginning to try to steal a TIE fighter, and he gets in it, and he even's like, whoa, these things really move, like, he's never flown a TIE fighter, and he's kind of got respect for it. I like him, man. I think he's, in this one especially, he's so cool. He's like one of the first guys you see. He's on this like cool secret mission. And I'm like, oh, that's my.
Yeah, and he's rash and kind of seat of your pants, shoot from the hip.
Yeah,
develop a plan as it's happening, kind of a thing.
Yeah, or ask questions later after you've killed everybody.
Yeah, so very much so, very Han Solo. Yeah. So obviously knowing, spoiler alert, skip a few 30 seconds. Obviously Han Solo dying. He starts to fill that void, especially as the trilogy goes onward, because he has a lot of those similar qualities. But.
Yeah. Do you like Poe? Are you a Poe fan?
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to have somebody kind of in that wheelhouse that handles all the extreme piloting and kind of leader of the missions, so to speak. So I like him. I think he's a necessary character, and he provides good banter back and forth between the team.
Yeah. I think I just tend to glom onto like the character I think is like the coolest. He's like the leader of Black Squadron and stuff, and like the March of the Resistance. Go listen to that song by John Williams. It is like the best piece of music for me that's come out of all this stuff. It's so flippin' good, and when they play it, like when the X-Wings are all showing up, you're like, oh my god, like. X-Wings are here, baby. Like, I don't know, man. He gets some cool moments to shine. And I like it, too, that he is, one of the main heroes, but his cool stuff is X-Wing stuff. Like, it's all mostly space stuff. He does a few things on the ground, and he's a pretty good shot. But for the most part, his heroic moments aren't on the ground with a lightsaber. He's like, I don't know how to use that. He's like, he's going around, he's flying, he's shooting. That's, like, his thing. And I dig it. I dig it a lot. It's like, I was starting to think, do he and Han ever really meet? Or they don't really talk too much. I'm not sure there's a lot of moments between the two of them, so maybe that was really intentional.
I don't think so, yeah, keep the two kind of separated and almost kind of develop that path or segue to the new character that kind of fills that void without forcing it.
Yeah. Also, we forgot to mention this earlier, but the Millennium Falcon, it's such an iconic ship, but for the love of everything holy, Joe and I flew it recently. There's so much to the left. who puts a cockpit on one side of a vehicle that big or a ship? I just don't. I feel like you're asking for trouble. You're gonna clip stuff, man. Even in space.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna, like, there's 100 yards to the left. Like it's big.
Yeah.
Or maybe not that much, but there's a lot.
Your depth perception and it's like when you're parking your car and you don't want to hit the bumper or scrape the bumper on that curb. You really got to have a good feel for how far away the front bumper of your car is from your seated position.
Yeah.
And with the Millennium Falcon, it's kind of tough.
Yeah, and when you buckle up, make sure to buckle up like over this way because you're going to do any of those maneuvers where you turn on your side. I'm just saying, man, you're going to fall out of your seat pretty quick. You smash your face into some of those controls. That's all.
The G-forces.
The G-force. They keep you in your seat. We know about G-forces. I think we need to move on, though, and talk about Joe's favorite character, maybe favorite character of all time. No, I'm just kidding. Not favorite character of all time. But we're talking, obviously, about the one, the only... Ben Solo. No, Kylo Ren. Where did he get the name? Did he make it up when he was hanging out at Jedi summer camp and he's like, well, if I were a Sith? Like, they're all sitting around the fire, like, late at night. Like, Luke went to bed. He's like, if I was a Sith, I'd be Kylo Ren. They'd be like, dude, you can't be Darth Kylo Ren. He's like, my grandfather was Darth Vader. He just, like, stands up and runs off. He's like,
screw you guys. Enjoy your campfire and singing Kumbaya. I'm going to go kill people.
Yeah, he's like, don't you wake me up when I'm sleeping. Don't do it with a lightsaber over my head neither, because I'll get real frustrated. Yeah. Shades of Last Jedi. I'll do things. But Kylo Ren... Obviously, you could draw those analogies to Darth Vader, who's like maybe my favorite character of all time. I love Darth so much. But Joe, tell me why you love Kylo Ren and why he's the coolest in this movie. He's like almost unstoppable. Like all we need is that Vader like hallway scene to just walk him down a hallway killing resistance fighters. That would have been
So I'll keep it blunt for starters, and I'll get into the details. But first of all, plain and simple aesthetic. The dude's badass looking beyond belief. Like, I love the mask, I love the robe, the garb, and just his overall presence.
Do you like the mask without the hood?
Spot on. I prefer it with the hood because it's a little more ominous.
I agree.
But regardless, the mask and all, love it.
Yeah.
Because that emotion never comes through. It's always just that intense. That mask is imposing. Period. I really appreciate the aesthetic. Number one, more than any character I've ever seen in Star Wars. Period. Number two, the casting for him. I think if this is all done a second time around and Adam Driver knew how it would go, we might not get him. I think, you can look into a lot of interviews and stuff with him, but he is a pretty artistic guy. He's done a pretty wide variety of roles, different styles over his years, and he's really exploded since his role in Star Wars and around the Star Wars saga trilogy coming out. But I think it was Limelight that maybe was a little much for him, and he couldn't. It can't speak for him, but you can look at interviews and stuff and kind of get his sense of how he felt about it. I think he's very appreciative of the role and everything, but also admittedly tells how it was a lot. And it's a lot of pressure too, because you're taking up the mantle of the big bad in the Star Wars franchise, who used to be manned by the one and only Darth Vader. So, but anywho, so the casting for him, Adam Driver playing that character, I don't know that you could have done any better. A unique person in his own right, and playing Ben Solo, Kylo Ren, he does it well, because it's almost, I don't want to say a split personality thing, but somebody who's struggling, in a sense, split personality, but he's struggling with his own internal emotions. And I think he really exudes that in those moments when, they pop up. But the introduction, let's talk about that. So this is our first introduction in The Force Awakens to the new generation, the villain of the story. So to establish the villain of the story, first off, it's a very direct and potent introduction. Walking off the ship, no one knows anything about him for starters. Ominous, it has a presence, the aesthetic is there. It hits people in the face when he shows up on the screen in those introductory moments. And they show him off well. They make him seem powerful. They make him seem like something that's a force to be reckoned with. Poe is kind of hiding off to the side as they're raiding this village. Poe, he's interrogating, I forget the name of the character, but Kylo's interrogating the old man who gave Poe the piece of the map. And, where's the map? I know you have it, that sort of thing. And then when he kills him, does he kill him himself?
Yeah, he does.
With the lightsaber? Yeah. So when he kills him, Poe kind of overreacts and fires a saber, a blaster bolt at him. And I mean, Kylo, without even looking, just freezes it. And it stops, and he has Poe brought to him. And this whole time, that blaster bolt is still frozen there, hovering. As he has this conversation with Poe, you get the whole, do I talk first? Do you talk first? I love that moment. Kylo's kind of he's trying that intimidation factor, which kind of works. And you get that sense, the awkwardness, Poe's like, do I talk first? You talk first. I mean, kind of quibby and arrogant, but also, the tension, right? Trying to cut the tension. And, needless to say, so that introduction, you get the ruthlessness. He shows off his power, stops the blaster bolt midair, and keeps it there for a long time. You get more ruthlessness with the execution of the village type of thing. He walks off, brings Poe with him. His Poe's being drug away. Kylo, releases his focus on the saber, even if he had any, and Poe sees it just boom, ping away, And that's something that people haven't seen, right? Jedi and Sith, you don't ever, they're uncommon at this point. You never see them. People think they're myths, that sort of thing. So him seeing that saber bolt stop and, fly away and all that, it's amazing to him and holy crap, So that intimidation factor is set up right away. They show off the power. They show off the brutality. All the while, they're keeping it very mysterious. It's a perfect introduction. So now, I won't get into all the nitty-gritty details because it's just too much. But throughout the storyline of the plot of this film, the other thing they do to establish the villain, which I think is well done, any good villain, you have to understand, right? You understand Kylo's motives. First off, Kylo gets his inspiration and whatnot from his grandfather, kind of a thing. And obviously, you don't truly understand him until later, till you know how he became Kylo Ren versus becoming a Jedi under Luke's guidance. But eventually, you understand why he went down this path that he did. So needless to say, as a villain of the story, I think they do a good job of making the audience understand him. Yeah, he may do bad things, but you understand why he is who he is and why he does what he does or what he's doing it for. So I think that's good that they establish that and make him relatable to the audience to where, you don't just see him as, a pigeonholed villain to chase around the good guys. You relate to him, you somewhat care about him in a sense. So given that, I think in order to continue the Star Wars saga, they did a good job of establishing a new villain to, take over that mantle. So a lot of people say, and I know Jimmy, you've kind of talked about it a little bit, but he's just a an imitation of his grandfather kind of a thing. Yeah, in a sense he is, but that's the point, right?
Yeah.
He's there to take up his grandfather's mantle and continue what he started.
Yeah.
Thinking that he understands why his grandfather was doing those things, and that is the right and just path based on his experiences as he was being trained and growing up. So, reasons why I like Kylo Ren. And covering his introduction to the film as the new villain.
Nice. Cool. He's fine. I think he's fine. I'm just kidding. I pretty much echo most all the things you say. I wish really badly we could have gotten, like, some more of, like, what maybe if he was convening or kind of with or communing with Vader, like, they could have had some of that, because, like, I want to know more of that motivation, and obviously they kind of try to flesh it out, maybe not in the best way in the sequels, but I would love it. I really think for a time, I don't know how true this is, I wonder if they were ever going to take it in this direction where, they said, he's like, I'm going to continue what Vader started. A lot of people maybe take that as, like, I'm going to continue what bad guys do. I thought of it as being like, what if he was saying, I got to do really bad things, and eventually I'm going to take out this new worse evil, myself, because I have to do these bad things to get close enough to do that, or to get powerful enough to do that. And I always wish that would have been, like, he would have said, like, he's like, he would have been like an anti-hero. Like, eventually he would have said, like, I did bad things, but I did it for a great reason, because this new thing came out of nowhere, this Snoke, and we got to make sure to kill it, because, like, this is a real big problem. But at the same time, the look of the character, I think he's well done. Obviously, I think the most complex character, probably one of the best acted characters in this whole trilogy, by far. He's super good, super compelling, and every time he's on screen, you, like, want to know more about him, right? I feel like it was just his introduction's good here. I want more. Like, obviously I want that Disney Plus show. I want, like, the Luke Skywalker and, like, Kylo Ren upbringing show. I want to know how he formed the Knights of Ren and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I also, the other thing too about this one is, like, I almost feel like they should have blown up all the politics in, like, the first few minutes and then done the resistance, because it does seem weird to be like, we have an established republic, but we also support this resistance, and, like, how did the First Order come back? Like, I want to, like, all that stuff. But it is cool that he is, like, he's strong. He does change up a little, because he doesn't outwardly kill his subordinates if he gets angry with them. He'll just mess up a computer thing and have a little tantrum, which I think was fun, because that kind of shows a different, like, we don't need just a Darth Vader parallel, but he gets angry and he'll choke someone if there's something that really frustrates him. Like, he's like, I'm not going to kill one of my subordinates over this. But then if it's something that's, like, really angering him, I don't even think he kills that one guy. But he kind of pulls that one dude close to him and he grabs him. He's like, did you say they're, like, what girl? Or whatever. Like, he gets really angry. But I love the Force Freeze. That's an ability that, like, gets thrown away. I don't know if it's because, like, people are too strong, like, Rey's too strong to fight off. But, like, when he finds her in the woods and he's kind of, like, deflecting all the blaster bolts she's, like, sending at him. And he just finally is like, and she just, gets caught, and he just kind of walks up and, like, puts his lightsaber, like, right next to her neck, and he's like, I can kill you whenever I wanted. Like, that's, I think, a good, like, a cool way to introduce a villain to our main protagonist, where you're like, wow, this guy's such a threat that even at a distance, even with Rey being as capable as she's been up to this point, even she is, like, at that moment, she's like, I can't, who is this guy? Like, and his ability to, like, he, tortures Poe and gets information from him, but then he can't do it to Rey, and it kind of gets rebounded. So there's this kind of, like, power struggle between them, which obviously gets kind of fleshed out in more so Rise of Skywalker. But I think it's kind of interesting, because you're like, this guy's unstoppable. Who could fight him? And then you're like, oh, okay. Like, maybe he isn't. And then he's obviously got a lot of, like, parental issues kind of going on in here. Like, he's so complex, and I like that in a character, man.
And I like seeing that they show a little bit of vulnerability from time to time, like when he's interrogating Rey, the way he reacts to the resistance of her mind, that sort of thing. It's interesting. Obviously, the helmet is such a big deal, or the mask, and the way he just his form on screen and presence. I think that mask and the aesthetic of his look has so much to do with it. I always agree that he should take the mask off from time to time at appropriate moments for certain things. In the Last Jedi, it's so like, man, where's his helmet? Like, oh, come on, you miss it a lot. Obviously, it gets reprised in the last one, but I like that they established the villain and they really kind of swing for the stands, right? Or swing for the fences, but. And then they get into the more intimate spots where he will take off the mask, and you see that more human interaction between him and, for instance, Rey. And you get the opposite of that with him and Poe, where he still continues to wear the mask and get the information out of him, right? Different demeanors or different feelings from each. So I think all that's really well controlled and done. As much as I miss it in the second movie, but I think just a testament to the way his character is written and portrayed. So
yeah, I do wish, and I get it's like probably like an acting thing. They probably put in his contract to have as much face time. That happens a lot in superhero films. You guys probably notice it in like final fights in superhero films. The masks often get destroyed or hurt, like in Spider-Man. Then you got to take the mask off and you can see the actor's face. I really wish we would have saved that initial helmet takeoff for when he meets with Han Solo, because he looks a little bit like what Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher, or I should say Han and Leia, if they would have had a kid, like that's kind of what I would think, kind of what he looked like, because I think that moment was like, and oh man, a freaking just Harrison Ford really could have phoned this in, but he doesn't. When he calls out, his name, he's just Ben, and you're like, I'll never forget it, man. Just sitting in the theater with my mom, the rest of my family, just leaned over to her. They're on that little catwalk, and I was just like, I just leaned over. I hadn't seen it, and I was like, I'm sorry, Mom, because she's like a big Harrison Ford fan, and I was like, he's not walking off this bridge. Like Harrison was like, yes, he's like, I'll come back for like $50 million, and you kill me. Like he's like, kill me, please. Like, but and I know you can't do too much between him and Han or him and Leia, but some of the best stuff I think in any of these movies are the little brief glimpses we get of that. Like, 'cause you put that guy, you put Adam Driver against any of the main trio there, and you get some really interesting stuff, I think, where you're like, wow, like this is not that the other actors aren't good with them, but like there's just something where his character sits in and amongst the three, kind of being like a little bit of each of them, is so interesting. Like it's just so like you just want movies dedicated to this guy, because you're like, okay, like it's like with Anakin, like now that you know more about him, you're like, with Vader, you're like, who the heck is he? Like you want I want a trilogy, or I want one movie where it's just like, Kylo, what happened? Like, like where was it? Like they kind of piecemeal it in, but I love watching him act opposite of Han, and I love that kind of that back and forth there, where he, I think, doesn't really know what he's gonna do in that moment when he sees his dad. He's like the dark is really powerful, but the light, kind of thing.
I think all what he said there is actually truthful, and then eventually through the conversation, it prevails. But
well, it's a little too poignant that the whole like Starkiller like base sucks out the sun and it like turns to darkness and then he kills him. I thought that was a little too on the nose for me personally.
I don't, because I guess I'm not looking for that nuance in the first screen run through.
Oh, it wasn't nuance. It was right on the head. It was like just light turns to darkness. It was like, he's a bad guy now.
Yeah, I guess I was too enthralled with the actual conversation and like looking at the two of them versus the environmental change around them, I guess. But yeah, obviously I caught it in rewatches. But how else would you have done it? I feel like it's fine. It's almost a perfect. It's almost more impactful that way, right? Yeah, maybe a little on the nose, but I mean, I think. The force and everything, it's nature, it's being connected to the universe kind of a thing. So in a way, maybe that actually was the actual effect.
Sure. I guess maybe for me, I would have done something a little different, where we kind of go back to him throwing a tantrum, where Han saying all the right things, and then he says like one thing that like, or like saying like, you don't want to disappoint your mother, or something like that, where he does it without realizing it. Like he has like
sure,
he does
something that
like,
maybe
like
something that sparks some anger within him, kind of a thing that would cause a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, I would love that. Or even if it were something like, and I really wanted this to happen in Last Jedi, where it's like some other stormtrooper pilots or whatever, TIE fighter pilots, like blew up Leia, and then they cut back to the base and it shows Kylo like just stabbing those dudes, where it's like on this one, if some other stormtroopers showed up and started firing and like one hit Han, or something like that, or he turned to defend him, and when he did that he like knocked him off or something, where he would be like I want there to be more conflict, in him, where he's just
sure.
like, shit, he's like,
but I think in speaking of how it developed over the next two films, it was also Snoke talked to him about it in the second film.
Yeah.
But him actually doing it by his own hand intentionally, I think, causing that rift between in his mind. I think it was necessary.
Sure,
right?
or like, yeah, if that's the case, then like him kind of going more into the dark side, where he's like, I'm sorry, like, Dad, I need to do this, and like that, and then stabbing him, being like, this is kind of my next step towards like getting more powerful to beat Snoke or to do whatever he wants to do. That's the only thing. Yeah. Besides that, I really like Kylo, and I feel like later on they don't use him as effectively as they could, because you're like, there's just so much.
Sure.
There. It's kind of like Superman in the DC movies. Like later on when he's in, it's just like, I want you to, like, there's so much to him. There's so much complexity there. You just gotta,
well, and one thing I'd like to touch on too, and it gets brought up, and not just with what you're saying here, but I hear it time from time. He's just a evil, angry big baby throwing tantrums all the time. His whole, swiping the computer and all that. And they even do that with like at Disney World with their show. He'll come out and he'll do like the swipe at the curtain and it falls apart or whatever, kind of reenacting that tantrum moment. It's like, I almost wish that didn't exist.
Well, he does it in.
I wish they would have done it differently or more subtly. Maybe they would have done that guy comes to tell him the news and he's really angry about it and anything else. And if he was about to go speak, he just like lights the saber and kind of resists to kill him, kind of a thing. Just to kind of, I just feel like that there's just the tantrum moment of him just wildly swinging is a little ridiculous. I think it could have been more impactful if it was like anything else, and the guy goes to speak and he's just like, and then the guy just kind of skedaddles away, and then maybe he like stabs something once and then like through the console, and then and slams the saber hilt down on the table and kind of broods over it, something like that. I think that could have been more tastefully done to make him not seem like such a. In that moment, you feel like he's kind of a rash, uncontrollable child.
Yeah. Well, he does that.
Yeah.
He does it a few times in Last Jedi too, where he tells them to fire everything at Luke, or when the Millennium Falcon shows up, he's like, "Shoot that thing out of the sky!" Like he kind of goes full tilt, and I think that's just kind of part of his character. It's not like he's a baby; he just can't control his emotions. And again, if he would have killed Han without thinking, that would have been amazing. Think of how cool it would have been to see Han get sliced into like 50 pieces. Like, do you think Harrison Ford was in on that meeting? He's like, all right, I'm going to die. And he's like, but I've got a few thoughts. And he's like, I want to make sure you kill me. I want to make sure I am so dead. You cannot bring me back. He's like, have Ben cut me to the molecular level. Like, just show like 5 minutes, just keep him going.
Like, I know people talk about slicing, but what I'm talking about is dicing.
Yeah, I want it to be. He's like, I want it to be so graphic. No one ever asks me about Greedo anymore. I want them to ask about that scene where I get chopped into billions of pieces, and I say, "Yep, that's just movies." And then he just walks away with like a huge sack of cash. He's just like, ha ha ha. Yeah, but again, Kylo, we talk about him so long because he's interesting or I think again really complex, a fun character. Good stuff.
And my favorite.
And your favorite. Let's just kind of wrap it up here. Just talking about a few smaller characters. He's a big presence, throughout, in a sense. But Snoke, not too much to talk about here. they use a really big hologram to show him off. At first, I thought
he's really not in the movie all that much.
I thought he was going to be a giant. They do it very Palpatine style, where they kind of show him off. I was so worried, Joe, that he was going to be a giant, because in Star Wars, they've got way better technology, I guess, than us, but the holograms have always been blue. So until that happened, where they like show the rocks falling through him, I was like, is he a giant? I was like, I thought in my mind of like, the third movie is going to be ridiculous. They have to fight a giant with a lightsaber, and he's like, "Here is my lightsaber." And it's like, I was so nervous. But Andy Serkis gives another. He's great. You know, he's not in it too much. I like it. It's fine. Not much to say. But I will say this: Hux, that guy in this movie, I think General Hux and Kylo Ren are the best they are in this movie, because Hux is like the full-on crazy fascist, completely believes in everything he's ever said and done, and he gives that incredibly rousing speech where they're standing like just a few hundred yards away from where Star Killer Base's like super laser shoots off, and he gives that huge speech. And, like, everybody's kind of, like, you know, they all kind of salute him at the end. And he's, like, almost crying when he sees the laser beam go off. He's just like, oh, like, he's like, I'm so happy we can crush these stupid people. Like, I hate politics. He gives us such a good performance. They do kind of make a mockery of him in future films. But this one, he's a pretty serious, I think, just, like, threat of, like, just an evil person. He's like, there's no like, oh, he became evil, he's complex. It's like, nope, he's just the bad guy. Like, bad guy, no more to him. He hates Kylo. Like, if he could, he would shoot Kylo. Like, I love that kind of like little rivalry they have, where he thinks they have, or like Kylo would be like, no, I don't see you as a rival, and Hux would be like, you're my rival, I'll never lose to you.
But he doesn't like living in Kylo's shadow.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And they're kind of vying for Snoke's, you know, attention and stuff, and or I should say Hux's. But do you like Hux? Do you think he's good? Do you think or do you not like him?
Kind of a snarky little Weasley bad guy.
Yeah, exactly. Not much more to him than that.
The
only other person I think worth mentioning today, obviously we talked about Han, Leia. You know, she's in it. She's great. I think it's cool to see her back. Yep. You know, and then you know she does a good job of kind of bonding with Rey pretty quickly. I know people kind of chastise her for not hugging Chewie in that one moment when they kind of come back and they realize Han's dead. Stuff happens, guys. Like, you know, it's okay. They love each other. They don't hate each other. But then Maz Kanata.
Well, then you have Chewie.
Oh yeah, I'll say Chewie. What about him?
Chewie's Chewie. I mean,
Chewie's Chewie. Exactly.
There's not much more to it. He doesn't scream as much in this one as he does in Last Jedi. Empire Strikes Back. That was the one where he just screams constantly. It's like, shut up.
Yeah, and this one it's Finn. Finn's screaming constantly. I'm just kidding. He likes to yell Rey's name.
True.
Maz Kanata is good. I think she's the most mysterious because for some odd reason she had Luke's, not only his lightsaber, maybe his arm from Empire, because they're like, where did you get that? She's like, that's a story for another day. And I was like, oh, I hope they address this in the movies. They don't. I was like, why do you have
No, it's
that?
fine. It's almost like a little Easter egg. And with movies like this that have so much history behind them, I feel like it's good to have those little Easter eggs for the true fans to kind of be like, oh.
I guess, but like, it's so weird because you're like, the last time we saw that was in like Luke's like severed hand. Like he's just
Sure.
like, I just want to know where she got it. I don't need the scene. I just want one throwaway line where she's like, yeah, I found it in some garbage. And you're like, all right, there you go. I do like that sequence where Rey touches it and has that kind of that Force memory kind of future thing that some of that stuff pays off, some of it not necessarily. That's a very trippy, like kind of fan servicey moment, and kind of the Knights of Ren and stuff. And I remember being so excited about the Knights of Ren, Joe. I was like, oh, these guys are gonna be so cool. It's like, are these other like Luke's other Padawans who were like, dude, screw you, man, like dark side for life, you know? And they like kind of, you know, pieced out.
They never explain the Knights of Ren at all, and they underutilize them. It's absolutely absurd.
Yeah, it's a little frustrating. But yeah, that's The Force Awakens. I know we kind of talked a little bit about even the fight scenes within them. Some action sequences, a lot like on the Millennium Falcon, kind of showing that off. X-Wing stuff. Some good ground battles. I don't know what the best lightsaber fight would be between Rey and Kylo, except I will give a little bit of love to, they call him Traitor or whatever his name is, but that one stormtrooper who shows up and he calls Finn out, and he's got the little shock baton. Because I think that was originally probably supposed to be Captain Phasma who did that, but that didn't happen. That guy, I don't know who he is, but people love him. Like, because he just shows up and he's just spinning his thing. He's like, traitor! Like, he's like, I'm gonna kill you, which I think is pretty great. I guess those stun batons were used for maybe like crowd control, but they're also great against lightsabers. So Snoke must have given a few away. He's like, we're probably gonna need a couple of these. Like, he's like, give a couple of those out. But yeah, I don't know. There's a it doesn't make a ton of sense, but I do love Han shooting the Wookiee bowcaster for the first time. Apparently, he's never shot it, but that he loves it. Like, he's shooting it, he's blowing people up, and he's like, it's pretty freaking sweet. He's like, I like this. Or he does like a no look shot. He just will do like boom, and he just shoots someone. You're like, you're that good. He's that good. I do want to say one last thing, though, before we move on. I don't like the big squid thing that they have to fight or whatever that's in Han Solo's carrier thing. That big floppy ball thing that, like, rolls down a hallway and is, like, got the tentacles and stuff. Not a fan of that, Joe. I'm not a fan of that thing.
The alien monster thing that, like, wreaks havoc on the cargo ship?
That's the one.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like all the other stuff in the movie, kudos to them for doing like a lot of real explosions and a lot of like real props and characters and stuff. That one just felt, man, and I know you're not going to make like a real prop out of that thing or like a real costume, but still, I didn't like that.
Well, I feel like we should touch on props.
A lot of realistic
this
stuff.
This film, all practical. I mean, like 90 some odd % practical. The CG items that you really get in here, obviously some of the flight stuff, but Snoke CG, I mean, pretty apparent, but you only ever see him in a projection anyway, so it's fine.
He would be, yeah.
But, other than that, I mean, there's pretty much everything here is very practical and real. You could reach out and touch it, so there's never any... That looks hokey. That looks fake. That looks hokey. There's never any of that. It's very like, wow. You feel like if you're in this movie, everything could be touched and like, wow, that's really there. I mean, from the creatures and this and that, it's just, and the characters overall, it's just freaking great. I assume Maz has to be CG motion capture, I assume. Mm. I don't know who played her, but...
It's funny, I'd see her, the actress who plays her, at things, and I was like, who is it? Because she'd be standing with everybody else. I was like, who is she? I was like, I've never seen her. Oh, she's Maz. I pictured something completely different. That's... I agree. It's so cool, especially at Maz's Cantina. There's a ton, like everybody there for the most part is like a real costume, real props, real everything. Like the big dude, and you're like, whoa, that guy. Like, which if
past podcasts have proven anything, Jimmy and I greatly appreciate practical effects.
I do. But I will say this because I know this has kind of been coming up more and more. In Episode 1, apparently there are more miniatures than like any other Star Wars. So even in the prequels, there's a lot of real stuff. It maybe just didn't look like as much. I don't know.
Yeah, they used a lot of scale effects for that one. The Death Star and everything.
I love it. That's when scales, dude. That's back in the day when scales and miniatures or bigatures were, between that and like Lord of the Rings, they're just so prevalent. I just don't think that, I don't know if that's
super creative. Anymore.
Oh, it's so creative. And like those people, the people who make those, not the people, like the people who make CG, all that stuff, incredibly talented as well. But there's something about like taking like a giant table and making like a fortress on it and making it like the most minute details you've ever seen in the world, and you're like, wow, like this is nuts. But yeah, no, I love the practical stuff. We already touched on the music. That's fantastic. And it really does a good job of setting up and refreshing the franchise for a new generation, kind of borrowing a lot, I think, from A New Hope, but doing it in a way that, you know, wasn't going to frustrate anybody, because I think the prequels really divided a lot of Star Wars fans. And I think this one was just like let's just do it and not do anything super crazy with it. Let's just do what we know, you know, and kind of set something up for later. And
they really did. They set it up well. I mean, the way they end it, the entire audience, if you didn't go, okay, episode 8 can start, now.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. Whereas, like,
If you didn't do that, you're crazy.
well, this one too, I feel like has way more of a cliffhanger than even the first, like, New Hope, because there's so much like, oh my God, Luke! Like, you see Luke, and Luke, like, he doesn't talk in this one, but he looks great and he's acting, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, you obviously just want to, it's just end of Fellowship, man. Just they're in there rocks. You're like, just next one, play the next one, and they're like, it's gonna be a while, and you're like, oh please, I want to know what Luke's gonna do. He wouldn't throw the lightsaber over his shoulder, would he? He might. I want to see the fan. But yeah, so Force Awakens, I think for me, probably falls somewhere in the middle for all Star Wars films. I like it. And out of this trilogy, I think it might be, it's either first or second on there. I like it. I think it's good. I think, like I said, I think the bad guys are at their best. I think, and to be honest, I don't think he carries it, but I really think Harrison Ford does such a good job in this movie. Like, he's just there's so much that he does, and he's great. You did great, Harrison. I know you didn't really want to come back, but I'm just so happy. I like you. I like you a lot. Joe, any final thoughts on Force Awakens here before we move on?
Well, I'm trying to think. I think we covered it all fairly well. By the way, Kylo Ren being my favorite, and I proved this to Jimmy just recently, that is my Call of Duty gamer name.
I think
so. In Call of Duty, anybody who dies to me died to Kylo Ren.
I think you've even said it on the show before, because when I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, I remember. I was like, I remember him talking about this somewhere.
I even wear a black and red outfit with a hood.
Oh well, it's kind of a hood, but it's like a satin sheet that goes over his whole head. It's very, very becoming. You're like, oh, how does he see through this? You're like,
I mean, I'm intimidating, bro. I'm intimidating. I'm running at you with my MP5. You're in trouble.
Is Kylo cold? I just want to know what the hood's about. Like, it's fine. I just want to know, like, if he got the helmet and he's like, it doesn't look cool enough, and he's like, make me a hood.
It's a tribute to the Grim Reaper, bro. Come on.
Yeah, the classic Grim Reaper in Star Wars that everybody loves. I like it. Have you ever like looked at his like the still art for him, and it's got like his cloak is kind of raggedy. Like, he's got money. Like, he's got First Order money. I wonder if he's like, just give me a black blanket. But he's like, I wouldn't be surprised if he used that as a kid. And there's like, oh, this is what they wrapped me in as a baby. And then he just puts it on.
What do you want to say? The Sith robes? Sith robes? It's always robes, man.
Yeah,
robes,
but his are tattered.
Robes.
His are not.
A little bit.
Palpatine's got the fancy stuff. He saved all the money for himself. He's like, here's some black blankets and stuff, whatever. Yeah, simple design, striking design. That's why he's hanging up over there. He's been there for a while. He overtook Altair for Assassin's Creed. Isn't that great? All right, Joe, we're moving into the next segment of the show that we're going to start wrapping this baby up. It's that segment that I like to call, that you like to call, that we like to call
Time Killers.
That's right, it's time for Time Killers. The games we've been playing, the movies we've been reviewing, the TV shows we've been watching. Joe, you want to go first?
What have I been watching and what have I been playing? COD Warzone, period. What have I been watching? I watched the movie Underwater with Kristen Stewart.
Oh, you touched on that a while ago. You're still thinking about that one, huh?
Oh, did I not? Did I talk about that in the past podcast? Maybe I did.
That's okay.
Oh yeah, I did. What else have I watched? I watched Becky with Kevin James and some little blonde girl. It's kind of like a suspense thriller type of deal, and pretty a little grotesque.
Sure.
It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. It's worth a watch if you're bored. It's not excellent by any means. I will say Kevin James, I think that guy can act, man. He ain't just a King of Queens guy. He's capable.
Comedians, man, they can be good actors.
Yeah. So I think that's really about it.
Cool. All right, fair enough. That's all right. Over here, it's been more of the fours, as I like to call them. Gears of War 4, just wrapping up that. Valkyria Chronicles 4, which has been great too. But I was talking to Joe about this beforehand. It's a show I just started a few days ago. I'm almost done with it. It's on Amazon. It's known as Upload. It's one of those ones that are showing me trailers for forever, which usually I just am like, oh, stop showing me ads for something. I don't want to watch it. But if you liked Good Place, it's kind of like that. So the basic premise of the show is that it's I don't know if it's like 2030 something, but basically, if you have enough money, you can upload your consciousness if you're going to die or if you're old enough and you just want to like move on to like an afterlife. So basically, you get put on like a hard drive and they put you in this kind of world. And depending on how much money you have, you can go to different worlds and like kind of live in them. And kind of the real world ramifications of that and what a time period would be like in that day and age. Made by Greg Daniels, who you guys will know from kind of making The Office, or kind of doing the American version of The Office. I'm probably butchering all that. Interesting show. It has its moments where it's funny, but I find that it's always the romances that carry me through. The romance through lines. I'm always like, are these guys going to get together? And then some of like the cool, interesting technology. Once in a while, there's a joke in there. One of my favorites was, and this is just a little one, there's like the support group for women whose husbands went to these afterlife places, or their significant others did. And this one lady's like, my husband, I lost him like 3 years ago or 20 years ago or something like that. And she's like, he doesn't call anymore. We don't talk ever at all anymore. And like the lead person of the group's like, that might be a settings thing. And she like goes to her settings on her phone, and she like hits a thing, and she starts immediately getting like message after message after message after message. Like this guy thinks that like he's lost his wife, and like just because the settings update didn't happen, and she's like, I gotta go. Like she just runs out of the room. And I was like, see, that is funny, you know, because there's like the thought of this poor guy being like, my wife, she doesn't love me anymore, and she's like, he doesn't love me anymore. It's funny to me, all right?
Sounds clever, yeah.
Yeah, but it's an interesting show, and obviously it's on Amazon, so it's got a budget, which these original shows on there and on Netflix, you like watch it and you're like, oh yeah, like you like you see these things, you're like, there's money going into this one. It's got a sharp, clear, crisp image. I like it. But yeah, some good leads in there. It's an interesting show. Check it out. Upload if you have Amazon Prime, but if you don't, then you can't, or you could just watch a trailer and talk about it then. Anyway, Joe, that means we get to move into our last segment of the show, which is community feedback.
And questions.
Yes. All right. So, Joe, you ready? We got a question for you, Joe. Are you ready for this one? This one comes in from Ryan Lehman 3 over on good old Twitter. He asks us, so Joe, do you think you want to play the Pokemon MOBA? They just announced this today. I don't know if you saw anything about this, Joe. Did you?
Not interested in the least.
Okay, good. Did you see it at all?
No.
Okay. Because then Christina Lily Sue asked us, tell us your battle plan. Don't worry, I'm going to help. If Joe were to play, I know Joe. I know who he'd play. All right? He wants to be a big old bruiser. He wants eventually to play Blastoise. All right? And he's going to want to team up, and he's going to get in there. He's going to shoot those big old water tanks, spin around and stuff. And then I'd play Charizard, and we just mop him up. That's all it is. It's a weird game, Joe, but it looks interesting. But it's weird.
I would be some sort of psychic Pokemon, so I can lazily brute force take over anything and everything.
They don't have any psychics yet. Snorlax might be your best bet.
You're telling me like Kadabra or Alakazam isn't in there?
Not yet. I wouldn't be surprised to see them. It was a lot of Gen 1 Pokemon. There was like a few offshots, but so far it's weird because some of them evolved.
Kadabra, Alakazam, like those are Gen 1.
Yeah, you're totally right. But they only have 10 characters in the game so far that we've seen. So like for instance, you start as a Charmander. By the end of the game, you'll turn into a Charizard. You like level up over time.
Wait, what was this game called?
It's called Pokemon Unite.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was Pokemon Snap.
No, not that one. No, new Pokemon Snap. I'm excited about it, but I get that not many people are, but I am. I just hate the name. New Pokemon Snap? Just call it Pokemon Snap 2. Or Pokemon Snap, Pokemon Islands. Pokemon Snap, New Horizons. Or like, I get they already used that one. Anyway, but yeah, I'm sure they'll put a Psychic in there. They'll put Mewtwo in there eventually, Joe. Don't you worry about it. I'm excited.
What's it called again?
Pokemon Unite. Yeah. It's for people who don't know, it's a cross-platform between Switch and mobile device games, and they're working in conjunction with Tencent, who, if people are finding out more and more, is a very large gaming company, and it's kind of a big deal because I'm sure it will do crazy numbers, but kind of like League of Legends for Pokemon, kind of, sort of. Again, interesting. I like MOBAs to a degree. I played Heroes of the Storm more recently. I will probably check this out and play it a little bit. It's called Free to Start. Which I'm guessing you can purchase in-game things such as skins.
Microtransactions.
I think it'll be skins and stuff, kind of what we're seeing more and more with the typical games. You can't like pay for power. But the one thing that is interesting to me that not a lot of games do, and this one's going to do, is like at certain levels when your Pokemon levels up, you get to choose a move that goes over maybe another move. So you get like 3 or 4 moves, but then because Pokemon's been around for so long, there's like, okay, your fire move when you level up, would you want to choose like Fire Blast, Flamethrower, or Flame Blitz, or something like that? And like, I guess each of them is different depending on the situation, which I think is pretty interesting. And I like to see a lot of Gen 1 representation in there. For me personally, that's what I like to see because I'm a Gen 1, Gen 2 kind of guy. I'm an old guy, though. But yeah, that's a Pokemon Unite question. Joe, we'll see if... you'd have
Ghost
to...
Pokemon, maybe I'm interested.
Gengar's in there. Gengar, everybody freaking loves Gengar. And my only problem, we've always talked about this, Joe, his design is fine, but it's too gremlin-like. They got away from Haunter. I want to do more ethereal. Do, like, hands and legs aren't attached, or it's not a ghost chandelier.
I'm more of a Haunter man myself. He's the one.
Haunter's the man. He took out bombs from his mouth and blew up Sabrina. Did anybody else watch that show? It's like, what move was that? I don't know. She loved
Just saying. Could do some damage, kill some people.
That's true. I love it. Haunter's what a goofball. Anyway, next question coming in, Joe. It's coming in hot. We already kind of talked about this, but Mr. Mage did ask how we felt how Han Solo was handled in The Force Awakens. Well,
I think we covered it quite well.
Yeah, I think so. I just wanted to make sure, just Missile Mage, because people, they tweeted us, they hit us up in the Discord, either or. But we appreciate it. One last thing I do want to mention here really quickly. New Marvel, The Avengers, they kind of showed off some more stuff. I'm excited. I just want Ghost Rider. For the love of there he is. Just put him in the game. I'm sorry. I will fight. I've heard rumors that he's going to be in Doctor Strange 2, and it might be, I almost called him John Wick, but it might be Keanu Reeves playing Johnny Blaze, which I'm like, oh my gosh.
Hell yeah.
I'm like, perfect. Like, I want to be Johnny Blaze, but if Keanu Reeves walked in that day after they had cast me and said he wanted to do it, and he's like, I would like to be Johnny, I'd be like, dude, do it. I'd be like
that was a good impression. That's how we would say it.
I was working on it with my sister because I joke about one day when I become a famous actor and Keanu and I are friends and I invite him to dinner and I don't tell Katie, and I'm like, she's a huge Keanu fan. So like we'd be sitting there, I'd be like, a friend is going to show up, and he'd show up, be like, hello, Katie. Like, you know, she'd be like she'd just turn to liquid in front of him, and I'd be like, this is my friend Keanu, and he'd be like, we're brothers, and I'd be like, oh yeah, man. I'd hug him and never let go. Keanu's just great, man. I just like that.
His training order imminent.
No, if you're actors, you can be buddies. That's fine. But anyway, I want to see Ghost Rider and Marvel's The Avengers. That game's looking pretty interesting. I want to play it. I want to try that beta. I really just want to see how it feels, because like it looks okay, but I think once you get to play it, that's where it's gonna really hook you. Because that's what I'm all about, man. That's what I want to get an Iron Man with a full black suit. I want to War Machine him. I want a full War Machine Iron Man, all gray, super chain gun. That'd be sweet. Anyway, that's just my dream. Joe, that's gonna wrap us up for today. People who are kind of listening in, if you guys ever have a question or a topic or anything like that, all you have to do is tweet the hashtag #CriticalPodcast to either of us. You can tweet at our official account, which is at GoCritical. That's GOCRITICAL. I don't know why I tried to spell that for the first time ever. I tried. Or you can tweet at me. I'm at JimmyGood013 if you want to tweet me there. Send me some Ghost Rider stuff, please, if you do. If you can, a GIF or anything like that. Joe, if people want to tweet at you, I know you're on Twitter all the time.
From time to time. If people want to tweet at me, it's at Lever_627. That's Lever, just like Beaver, only with an L.
And today's hashtag will be hashtag Kylo Ren. For Ryan and for Joe. And anybody want to tweet that at us, lets us know you enjoyed the show. I am trying my darndest to get this show on Spotify. I know I should have done it a long time ago, but I'm like this flippin' close. So if you just want to listen to this in the future, hopefully soon it'll be on there. Because I wonder sometimes if we'd be doing a lot better number-wise, Joe, if we would have put this on an audio-only version. But it's okay, because I'm a patient man and I adapt, I overcome, that's what I do. Anyway, if you want to hang out with us, I stream on Twitch a couple times a week. It's usually Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but that is up for change, because sometimes I leave for the weekend, sometimes I stream on a Thursday instead of a Friday. Do you understand? But also, thank you to everybody who's over there, who donates to us on Patreon. I appreciate that so much. You guys do not need to do any of that, though, because you just listening to us, that's a big deal. And let's start a conversation. Please, I want you to put in the comments below, like, do you like Force Awakens? Do you hate it? Do you love certain characters or hate how they handle things? I just want to know. I just want to start. I want to talk with you guys. It's so good. I love seeing a little comment pop up. I'm like, oh my god, it's a comment. Because that's meaningful to me. Anyway, Joe, anything else you want to say here before we wrap up the show?
Nothing from my end, pal. It was a pleasure discussing The Force Awakens with you.
It was a pleasure. Oh, pleasure is all mine, Joe. Oh my gosh, I feel like we could do this for at least 2 more movies, if not 4 more. There's so many Star Wars movies, am I right? My gosh. Anyway, thank you everybody for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. And until next week, just remember to adapt and overcome. Bye-bye. And there we have it.